Let's get into the Gemara over here. We're on page 3b, and we were learning about a story of Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus, who went to visit Rabbi Eliezer in Lud, and Rabbi Eliezer asked him what insight did they come up with in the Beis Medrash. And Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus, he tried to tell Rabbi Eliezer what he heard in the Beis Medrash, that they came up with this conclusion that you take Meiser Ani, a tithing that is a little surprising. Normally, Shemitah year everything is exempt from tithing, and they came up with this very innovative concept, that in decree that in the Shemitah year, in certain cities, they would actually take Meiser Ani. They would do a tithing on Shemitah, and I mean, you have to understand there's a few problems with that. Number one is Shemitah is a time when we don't work the fields, so and the fields are considered ownerless, and that would mean that there should not be any tithing, because anything that's ownerless, you don't take the tithings from. And additionally, the year of Shemitah is the 7th year. There's no rules about tithing in the 7th year, because tithing has a time frame. For example, the tithing that goes to the poor is always on the 3rd year and the 6th year. The tithing that's called Meiser Sheni, that you take with you to Jerusalem and you celebrate in Jerusalem and eat it in Jerusalem, that's on the first year, 2nd year, 4th year, and 5th year. So there's 4 years of you celebrating in Jerusalem called Meiser Sheni, the 2nd tithing, and 2 years out of this 6-year cycle, the 3rd year and the 6th year, is Meiser Ani. It goes to the poor. And what happens in the 7th year? It's exempt. It's ownerless. And even if you want to tell me you're going to do, you know what? You have to take Meiser in the 7th year. Which Meiser would make sense to take then? Well, we do know that Meiser Ani, the Meiser, the tithing for the poor, is never 2 years in a row. Let me mute everyone here. It's never 2 years in a row to take the tithing for the poor. The tithing for the poor is the 3rd year and the 6th year. So if we're going to do the 7th year also, it would make sense to do the 2nd tithing instead of the poor people tithing. The 2nd tithing, meaning the tithing where you eat it in Jerusalem, that's called the 2nd tithing, Meiser Sheni. That would make sense, because that type of tithing, we do find that you do year after year. You could do a few years in a row. You do the 1st year and the 2nd year. You do the 4th year and the 5th year. So that would make sense, maybe, if you want to do tithing, to do the Meiser Sheni, not the Meiser Ani. You do the tithing for so the Gemara. So this seems to be quite a innovative concept, that you're, number one, doing a tithing in the 7th year, and you have produce. You're doing a tithing, and you're doing the tithing that you're doing is the tithing for the poor. But Rabbi Eliezer actually was shocked that he said this, because he says this is all obvious. We have a tradition about this for generations, almost like it's halacha l'Moshe Misina. I use that term. It's almost like a law given by Moses at Sinai. It's such a this is an innovative statement. This is what your rabbis thought they were coming up with. This is an obvious thing that we know. So he was angry, but he also said, make sure they don't retract it. I hope they're not, if they think it's such an innovative idea, they might actually change their mind at some point. So he said, they came up with the truth, at least. They came up with the right shot. Soid Hashem liyareyav. The secret of Hashem is to those who fear him. That means that they did come up with the right insight. At least they came up on the right side of it. They're wrong for thinking they innovated this, because it really was a tradition from way back. But at least they came up with the correct way and not the other way. And basically, he's telling them al tahushu leminyanchem, they should not be concerned that they might have made a mistake, because not only are they right, but this is something that's been established well before these rabbis, came to this decision. So, and then Rabbi Eliezer was so angry at Rabbi Yossi that it somehow caused Rabbi Yossi to become blind, and then of course he davened for him afterwards, and he was healed. So it definitely deserves a lot of thought what exactly is going on there. This is a story of the Gemara, which means that there's obviously deeper meanings behind it. What we're seeing here is it's what you call a gadita, really. It's the story part of how he was angry and how he caused him to be blind, and in the commentaries they do try to add some insight into this story. I don't know if the Steinsaltz, maybe David, do you have any insight into the story from Rabbi Steinsaltz? Or it definitely deserves more input, but at least the halacha part, I think we sort of covered, and the Gemara actually explains and discusses the logic behind it, that really Shemitah does not apply in these cities. We're talking about cities that are on the outskirts of Israel. They're outside of the actual Israel proper, and they're on the east side of the Jordan River. And we're talking specifically about these cities that are they were not conquered. It's called Ammon and Moav, and they did not have the rules of Shemitah. The reason they didn't have the rules of Shemitah is because even though the first conquest did conquer these cities, but once the destruction happened, it was nullified, because the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash by the Babylonians and kicking us out of our lands and so on, it basically, since we only got them through conquest, so conquest somehow caused them to be to lose their holiness. Now, it doesn't mean that Yerushalayim lost its holiness. It means that the Beis Hamikdash doesn't mean that the Beis Hamikdash lost its holiness. It means that the cities of Israel lost their holiness. Now, when we went back with Ezra to reconquer Eretz Yisrael, so they didn't use conquest. Somehow they used another form method called chazaka. And because they used a different method of making the cities holy, so therefore the second Kedusha, whatever they sanctified on the second time around, when the Jewish people came after the story of Purim, and they rebuilt the Beis Hamikdash with Ezra and Nehemiah, and after the 70 years of exile, they came back to the Beis Hamikdash, they rebuilt it. Then whatever they conquered, then those cities that they conquered, they actually took on a holiness of Eretz Yisrael, and that holiness stays until today. That's Kidsha. That would be Kidsha L'Yasud Lavi. The first conquest wasn't Kidsha L'Yasud Lavi. It didn't cause there to be a holiness that lasted, but it just stayed as long as they lived in Eretz Yisrael. But the second conquest accomplished more. But the thing is, they were careful not to conquer all the lands the second time around, because they specifically wanted certain lands in order that the poor people will be able to benefit from them during the year of Shemitah. Now, how do they really benefit from these cities during the year of Shemitah? So number one, if there's no Shemitah, then there's something called leket, shikha, and peah, that whenever the farmer drops some of the wheat, it falls to the ground, poor people get to pick it up after. In other words, the farmer's not allowed to go down and pick up the one or two stalks that fall. He has to leave it there for the poor. So the poor people would come to the fields and they would pick up these stalks that fall, or if the farmer forgets some stalks or forgets a sheaf, the poor person is able to come and take that, in addition to the corners of the field called peah. Peah means the corner of the field. The owner has to leave the corners for the poor people as well. So the poor people were able to benefit from having these vegetable fields or grain fields during the year of Shemitah that they were actually worked on. These lands were worked on, and the poor people were able to go there and take their portions. In addition to that, there was Meiser, as we're learning here, there was Meiser Ani, that they had to take a tithing from their from the produce and give it to the poor. And even though normally this is rare that you would ever have 2 years in a row of Meiser Ani, but here you have Meiser Ani. Here you have it 2 years in a row. You have the 6th year and the 7th year in these cities. That's not in the whole Eretz Yisrael. In these specific cities, it applied that you would give this tithing to the poor. Now, in addition to this, there is a Rashi, not in our tractate, but in a different tractate that mentions that it also gave jobs to the poor people, because if you could work the field, then the poor people would take those jobs and they would work the field. So it actually gave them parnasa during the 7th year. Normally in Eretz Yisrael, you're not working the field, so there's no work available. But here, this actually gave work to the poor people. So you have basically these. They set it up in a way that it would benefit the poor people, and therefore they did not sanctify these cities when they came back to Eretz Yisrael. So this would be beneficial to the poor people who would rely on them, and that was the reason for this halacha about Ammon and Moav, that these cities called these countries called Ammon and Moav, that there's certain areas that we conquered, that you take Meiser Ani on the Shemitah year. So that was the halacha that Rabbi Eliezer was very upset that they didn't know this was a tradition from before, and they thought that they're the ones coming up with this, and Rabbi Yossi was basically giving credit to the rabbis of now instead of the rabbis of way back, of who really established it, the Anshe Knesset Agdola and so on. So the reason why this story is brought here is because we're explaining why these, as Ezra pointed out on Friday, that we're explaining why the other rabbis were hesitant to share insights from the Beis Medrash. They were hesitant because they were nervous that maybe Rabbi Yeshua would get angry like Rabbi Eliezer got angry, and maybe he would be, he would say something wrong, maybe something that, say something that would cause, some type of an issue, and Rabbi Yeshua might get angry. So therefore, they were hesitant to do it until he sort of like pressed them, and of course afterwards he was very happy that they shared with him those insights. He seemed very impressed that with those insights. He called it a gem or gemstones or diamonds that you wanted to withhold from me. Okay, now the Gemara jumps to another discussion, and this is a very important discussion, and it really becomes a very applicable when it comes to the laws of marriage and divorce. I mean, it applies to all areas of Torah, but you get there are situations where Rabbanim have to paskin, they have to give a verdict in very complicated cases. And the cases that I'm talking about is when a person becomes crazy, has some type of a mental illness. And the issue is that if there's a divorce, that either a woman needs to receive the divorce, but she came down with a mental illness, or let's say the man wants to give the divorce, but he's partially, there is some type of a mental illness there. And the question is, at what point do we say that the person is no longer eligible to affect such a act of acquisition, or such an act of that has legal status, legal application, and consequences, legal consequences. So, in other words, divorce it's a very serious. Is this really a kosher divorce? If the person is not sane enough to give the get, then if he gives it, it's not considered a divorce, and that could lead to questions of mamzerus, that the next child born from this woman, if she's really considered married to the previous husband, then that would be a case of that would be the child would be a mamzer. So these are very serious situations. It's the Gemara is discussing what is really a shaita, who falls into that category, because you could have people, many people walk around. In fact, everyone's a little crazy, and they say only the smart people know how to hide it. But we all have some type of a mental illness type of thing. You know, I mean, we're all a little mashuga. But so the question is, to what extent? You know, and where do you draw the line? And many people they function. They're functional. They you know, but where do you draw the line and say, no, at this point, it's not considered, won't be considered a good get? So the Gemara here, we're on page 3b, and we're dealing with what is a shaita, who is a fool. So the Gemara here says, Tanu Rabbanan. Let me tell you what line we're on. We're towards the end of the page. We're about 7 lines up from the bottom of the page. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis learned in a brisa. Now, you have to keep in mind that this discussion is connected to our Gemara as well, with regard to the laws of Re'iyah. Our Mishnah said that Hakol Chayavin B'Re'iyah, everyone is obligated in being Oila Regel or bring the Karban Re'iyah, except for a Cheresh Shoita V'Katan, except for a deaf mute, or depending on how, you know, the missing words in the Mishnah, even someone who's just deaf or just mute is exempt from Re'iyah, and a Shoita, and someone who is deranged. Now, to what extent? So the Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis learned, Izeu Shaita. So who is a Shaita? And again, we're talking about it applies to our tractate, but it also applies, maybe even more importantly, to other laws with regard to marriage and divorce and so on. Izeu Shaita, who is considered deranged. Hayoytze Yechidi Balayla, someone who goes out alone at night, and the commentaries add over here that it's referring to a case that's you go into a forest or a desert or somewhere that it's not, you know, it's not a normal thing for people to go. It's a uninhabited area, and if a person were to go there at night, that would be sign number 1 of a shaita, is deranged. V'halon b'veis hakvaros, someone who sleeps in a cemetery, and someone who sleeps in the cemetery, you know, that would be sign number 2. V'hamakareya es tsusai, and someone who tears his garment, obviously not because he has a mitzvah to tear, or not because, you know, or not because he by mistake his garment got torn, but someone who goes outright intentionally tears his garment for because he's crazy. Basically, it's a sign that he's crazy. Now, you have to keep in mind, there are people that are totally deranged, and those people we don't need signs for. Our Gemara is talking about someone who's, you know, questionable if they're deranged or not. Someone who's totally mentally retarded, you don't need these signs. This is not, you don't have to really look out for such signs. But the signs of these signs are applicable to a case where a person is questionable if he's really considered, to what extent. It's a little off. The question is how much off it is. Itmar, we learned in a brisa. Itmar is not a brisa. Itmar means the Amoraim taught. So the Itmar, the Amoraim, or they said, Rav Huna said, Ad shiu kulan b'bas achas. You need all 3 of these. And if a person has all three of them, then we would say that he is considered a shaita. Now, it uses the term b'vasachas, but the commentaries say it doesn't mean that he has all three at the same time. In other words, he doesn't have to be in the cemetery ripping his garment and going out alone at night, because, going out alone at night means he's going somewhere else. Let's say sleeping in the cemetery could be even if it's in a inhabited city, and the cemetery is right in the middle of the city, and you'd still be, so you can't do really all of them at the same time, because how does a person sleep in the Beis HaKvaros and go out? Is he sleeping, or is he going out alone at night? And and while he's sleeping, is he tearing his clothes? So basically, it doesn't mean bavas achas in that sense that it's all at once, but it means that all three of them, three things are happy. This person does all three of these things. That's Rav Huna's opinion. Rabbi Yochanan says, afilu biyachas mehen, even if he does one of these things, one of these three, he could be considered a shaita. Could be considered deranged, and you don't need to do all three of them. Heichi dummy. So the Gemara asks, how is this talking about? What is this? What does this exactly mean? If the person does these actions in a way that looks like he's doing it in a crazy way, he's acting crazy. So even one of these should give him that title of a shaita. And if he did not do these things in a crazy way, even if he does all of them, then he should not be considered deranged. He looks like he's very thought out and acting very, in his mind, and he puts his sleeping bag out in the cemetery, and he has his negelwasser next to, he seems like he's got himself all, he's got himself all organized. If he looks like he's doing it and he's tearing his clothes, but he's tearing it in a way that, looks like he has something in mind, I don't know. And he goes out alone at night, but he looks like he's, he looks very on top of things. He looks very relaxed. And so if he looks like he's doing things in a normal way, so why would we consider him a shaita? So what exactly, when do these three things apply that you give him that title of a shaita, and that you would need all three? So the Gemara says, and even one should be good enough, to if he's acting in a way like a shaita. So what is this argument really? What is Rav Huna and Rav Yochanan really arguing about? So the Gemara answers, he's doing it, he's acting in a crazy way, in a deranged way. The person who sleeps in the cemetery, Amar, you could really say that there's a reason why he's doing it. Tishra olav ruach tumah. He wants that there should be a spirit of impurity to rest upon him. That's why he's doing this. So he's sleeping there because he has some type of interest in having some demons or some impurity rest upon him, because this way he'll learn how to do his black magic. Or Rashi uses this term. He says, "Shiyasayuhu liyas machashiv." So he's into his kishuv, into this type of sorcery or black magic, and so he's specifically entering the cemetery because he has this in mind. He thinks this will help him with his new position. And Hamakareas Ksusai, person who's tearing his garment, Amar Baal Machshavasu. You could say that maybe he was concentrating on something, and it caused him not to realize that he's actually ripping his garment. In other words, he's so engrossed in thinking about something else that his garment is got torn. He was tearing for it. Oh, I skipped some. You're right. I skipped the someone goes out alone at night. Thank you. Amar ganderipis achade. That you could say that some type of a Rashi says two things here. Rashi says that ganderipis either means a sickness that he's worried, has a certain worry, or his body got very warm and he needs to go out in fresh air. So some type of a medical condition happened to him that he wants to go out alone at night. So there might be a reason why he's going alone at night into this uninhabited area, because either, some type of a worry that's affecting him, some type of nervous situation, nervous breakdown, nervous, he's has some type of a need to be in this fresh air, or maybe he's just very hot and he needs the fresh air. So that could be the reason why he's going alone at night. And person who tears his garment, Amar Baal Machshavos, who maybe he's a Baal Machshavos, he's involved in thinking about some type of a some type of a engrossed in his thoughts, work, or something going on in his life, and he's actually tearing his garment, but he doesn't even realize what he's doing. So that would be an excuse why he's really is not a shaita. Now, he looks like he's a shaita. He looks like he's some insane, but in truth, there's a reason for it. So Kivan de Abdeno Lakulu, once he does all these three, Havi Lahu, it's considered as if, and now we turn the page to 4a, Kamai Shenogach Shor Chamor Gamel. It's as if he gored these three animals, and it's like an ox that gores these three. He's like we would consider him similar to what we say about a ox that gores, that if it gores a shor, another ox, or it gores a chamar, a donkey, and it gores a chamar, a donkey, and it gores a gumel, a camel, v'naseh muad lakol, and the law is that such a person becomes the owner is obligated to pay for this animal the laws of muad, because the animal becomes what we call a muad, becomes accustomed to. There's a tom animal, simple, that he might have gored once, but it's not his nature. And then a muad is someone who's expected to. It's part of his nature is that he's a goring animal, and that animal has different laws. It's called a muad. So this type of animal that gores three times in three different animals, he becomes a muad to all animals, and he doesn't care about which animal it is. He basically is a muad to all, because we see he gored an ox, a chamor, donkey, and a gumel, a camel. So because he gored all of them, so we say he's not selective in who he gores. It's an animal that whenever he gores any other animal, so if he gores a dog, he'll have to pay the full payment. That's called a muad. A tom that gores, he pays only half, and he also only pays a certain. It's only taken from his value. But the muad is a regular obligation of paying, because the animal is accustomed to doing this. So he would be a goring animal. The same thing would apply in our case to the laws of a shaita, that we would say that a shaita, if he does these three things, we would say he's a muad. He is accustomed to being a shaita for all matters. So when it comes to the laws of Riyah, he's a shaita. When it comes to the laws of transactions, he's a shaita. When it comes to the laws of marriage and divorce, he's a shaita. Once he does these three things, he is considered a shaita. Yes, Ezra.
Are they saying that he is given the title?
Well, the law, the I don't know if you would introduce him as, oh, we have the shaita so and so is now going to give us a little talk. I don't mean it in that sense, but he gets that. I mean, that's his. He's officially halachically considered a shaita. I mean, I'm sure a shaita could. There are shaitas that are healed. You know, it's not necessarily a lifetime thing. He could get on medication and become healed, but at least at this stage, this person would be in the category of shaita and would be exempt from mitzvahs. And that's what we said earlier, that he's exempt from all mitzvahs, and it would have application of if a person were to need to get divorced, that would be an issue. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I see a word here that I don't understand. Gandripas?
Yeah.
What is that?
I translated it the way Rashi explains that he has some type of Rashi says two things. He says choili ha'oiches mitoich daiga, a sickness that attaches to him because of worry. So he's some type of a depression or worried or nervous breakdown type of a situation. And then his other thing is that his body is hot and needs to go to a makom avir, to a place of air, of fresh air. So he wants to go yechidi balayla, not because he's a meshugana, but because he has some type of a health need to do that. So it's not doing it just out of a mishagas.
Well, in Israel, I would see sometimes people that had big muscles. They would tear the sleeve to show that their muscle is so big that it doesn't fit in the sleeve.
So then they have a reason. Here we're talking about you have no reason
They didn't have a reason.
To show off. Showing off. Honor is
yeah.
a big thing. That's the whole life of people. Their whole life is all about getting honor.
Yeah.
So it's a big thing. It's part of one of the most important things people say in their life. So there's an interesting question. Many years ago, I heard this cute vart. I believe it's from Reb Chaim of Brisk. That he asked. He says, if the person does all these three things, we say he's a shaita. But what happens if he does two of them or one of them? So we say, well, one of them, it could be that he wants this ruach tumah to come on him at night, so he goes to sleep in a cemetery. Oh, he's tearing his clothes. Well, he doesn't realize he's a bal machshava. He's engrossed in his thoughts, and he ends up tearing his clothes. Okay, all right, so he's not a shaita. Everything he does, we have an excuse. He has a good excuse. So we're not going to consider him a shaita. We're not going to say he's insane because he's got an excuse. So when you have three things, you still have three excuses. So how could you really say that he's a shaita if you really do have three excuses? So I'll just tell you his answer. It's a cute line that he says. It works very good in the Yiddish. He says, Ein teretz is besser von drei terutzim. Ein empfer is besser von drei empfers. One answer is better than three answers. That's the answer. One answer is that the guy's a meshugana is a lot better answer than saying, well, this he's doing for that reason, and this he's doing for this reason. One answer is better than all three. So that's the part. It's easier to just say he's a meshugana than to say that would make more sense than to say each one he has an excuse for. Yes, Mordechai.
Yeah, isn't there a Gemara elsewhere with a story about a man who had a fight with his wife, and he wound up sleeping in a cemetery, and then
Masechet
started
Berachot.
getting information from the next world.
Right.
Masechet Berachot.
Yeah. We learned it. Yes.
Right? Yeah, we learned that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so he was not a shota, even though he was sleeping in the cemetery, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I guess the Gemara could have used that as well. That maybe the reason why he's sleeping in the cemetery is because he got into a fight with his wife, right?
But the reason why he's there is because of the fight with his wife. Here, I think they're talking about this guy, and for no reason at all, just goes
Right.
and he decides to do this.
Right. Especially in those days when you could hear everything in someone else's house, and when he gets into a fight with his wife, he probably heard her screaming and hearing him leave and running out and going to the cemetery. So there's a reason, as Ezra is saying. It's clear that there's a reason why he's going. But the case that we're talking about is you didn't hear any fights going on there, and he just walks out of his house and takes his little suitcase and goes to a cemetery and goes to sleep, or doesn't take a suitcase and just lies down in the cemetery. Yes, Ben.
Maybe they didn't use the case of trying to reach somebody because it's not common for a learned person to go to the cemetery and try to reach somebody. It's
Right.
more
It's very
common that a nut will go and sleep in the cemetery.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's to think that you'll be able to speak to the souls is quite a
But
It's not
quite
common.
a high level.
but he wasn't trying to do that.
Right,
just-
right. But if the Gemara gave that example that he wants to, in other words, Mordechai was saying maybe it's because he's getting into a fight with his wife, that's why he went. But Ben is saying maybe he's going to speak to the to the souls, and that is not common that he's going to be able to. So in other words, you have both points here, but both of them don't seem to. The Gemara wouldn't say either of them, because neither of them would work. Okay, so that's basically this law of the shaita. The Gemara continues.
But Rabbi, we did learn something about I think a son going to the cemetery to speak to his father.
Yeah. But it's not common.
He was asking the question where creditors came to him asking for money, and he went to the cemetery to ask his father where the money was put.
They collected money.
And his father told him where to find it.
But I think that was a dream that he had. I think that was the case that we were talking about. And I think I brought it up. I don't think it was a Gemara was it a Gemara that we learned, or did I bring in this case?
No, we learned it.
We learned a Gemara about that? Uh-huh.
I thought it was still in Berachot as well.
Uh-huh. I'll have to review. Yeah, I remember there was a case where a person has a dream and his father says, there's money over here, give it to so-and-so, or this money is meiser. Are you allowed to keep that money? And or do you have to believe that it's meiser, and that has to go to a certain person? Does a dream, do the words of a dream, do we take it for everything that he says, or can we say, well, you found the money, but it doesn't become prohibited for you to use just because you had a dream and it says that it's truma, doesn't mean it becomes truma or meiser. Just because it's a dream. A dream is ein chaloim b'li dvarim b'telim. There's no dream without things that are not applicable. And we came up with this interesting insight then that there was a difference between monetary laws and prohibitive laws. For example, there's a Gemara in the Nedarim that talks about a case where a person is put into cherem in a dream. He's excommunicated in a dream, and so he needs to get 10 people to be matir. So when they ask a question, what about the case of having a dream about money? And there, you don't have to. We're not worried if you had a dream and it says the money that there's money in the corner of your house, and it's money over there is Meiser Sheni. Let's say you don't have to go and bring it to Yerushalayim, because we don't have to. A dream is not real. A dream is false. It's full of false things. So the question was, what about this? The other Gemara in the Darim, where it does seem to say that you need to be tzorech chasara la'atiroi, right? You need 10 people to be matir. So we came up with an answer that there's a difference between monetary laws and prohibitive laws. Monetary laws is suffik mammon lakula, or suffik hamitzi mechaber varaya. That when it comes to monetary laws, you got to prove that it's not yours. If you have it in your house, it's your money. When it comes to prohibited laws, it's a suffik isura. It's a suffik isur. You have to be machmer. So that was one of the ways of answering that issue. Anyway, but I have to look up and see if there is the Gemara. Yes, Ben.
I don't remember that we learned that it was Meiser. I thought it was the father was collecting money for the poor.
Oh, maybe something like
that. And
that.
then when the son he passed away, the son couldn't find the money to give it to whoever he was supposed to give it to. Something like that. I'm not sure.
Okay, all right. Good, you're reminding me. All right, I have to look it up. I'll try to find it.
I thought that the fact was that people were asking for the money that he had collected for the poor, and so maybe his name was, there was a motzi shem ra against him, and that's the reason why the son went to the cemetery to find out what was what.
Okay, all right. So now we have a lot of points. We got to now find it. All right, that's homework today. While we're watching the candles, we'll have to take a look, try to find this story. I don't know, it slipped my mind. Okay, so Mordechai, you're the guy who remembers everything. Mordechai, you should know this. Do you know where this story is? You heard Ezra and Ben, they were mentioning the story about someone who went to the cemetery to the money for the poor, and he didn't know where his father put it, and they wanted it. The poor people were demanding it. You remember such a story?
That I don't know, but I do know that there was that thing. There was that thing with Kedor, where the two guests, the two Rabbanim who stayed in with somebody named Kedor, who had that story where one of them, when they found out that the person's name was Kedor, one of them said to himself that he doesn't trust the guy because of a pasuk, because Kedor.
Yeah.
And so he decided to place the money, on the father's grave. And Kedor's father came to him in a dream and told Kedor that there was money on his grave. So I'm not sure whether that's the same story.
No.
All right, we're gonna have to look up these stories. All right, so
that one, I think. The one that I was just citing is like near the end of Masechta Yuma.
Near the end of what?
Near the end of Masechta Yuma.
Right.
The one that I was just telling.
Okay, all right. So the Gemara continues, and so the Gemara had said that when you do all three, that's when you know that when you do all three, you know that the person is a shaiti. So you need to do all three, and this was basically explaining at least Rav Huna's view that you need to do all three of them, and we know that he is a shaita. Now the Gemara asks and says, Amar Rav Papa, Amar Rav Papa, Ish mi'alei Rav Huna hadatanya. If Rav Huna heard this brisa, Ezeu shaita, who is someone who is considered insane, this is someone who destroys or ruins what is given to him. Now, if Rav Huna would have heard this, Hava Hadarbe, he would have changed his view and would have basically agreed with Rabbi Yochanan, because all you need to do is one of these things and you're considered a shaita. You don't need to have all three. So the Gemara says, Iboilu. They asked the Bnei Yeshiva, the students of the school, they asked the question about this. Ki hava hadarbe, if Rav Huna would have changed his, or when he would change his view, would he have changed his view with regard to the case of tearing his garment? Did damya laha, because it's similar to this? Dilma, or maybe mikulu have a hadar, or maybe regarding all three of these cases, he would have changed his mind, and he would have said that basically only this is the correct one. Let's see Rashi over here. Ishmiyalahu, in the fourth line of Rashi, Ishmiyalahu hadatanya. If he would have heard this brisa, the mashma b'davar echad machzika naisa b'shaita have a hadarbe. If he would have heard this brisa, which implies that even if by one thing, he would have, even one of them is enough, and is considered a shaita. You don't need all three. So that is the Gemara's question, and the Gemara ends off teku. Teku means tishbi, yataretz, kushios, v'iboyos. Tishbi means Eliyahu Hanavi will answer the questions and the contradictions and questions. And that means that Eliyahu Hanavi will answer this. The Gemara continues, and it says, V'tumtum v'androgynous. Tumtum and androgynous are exempt from being oila regal and bringing a carbon oila, bringing the carbon that of the base of in my car. Back seat. So the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis learned in a brisa. Zachor, it says Zachor. The actual pasuk is shalosh. What is the pasuk? Kol zechorcha. Shalosh pa'amim bashana yeroa kol zechorcha. So it says zachor lahitzi es hanashim, zechorcha lahitzi tumtum v'androgynous. Kol zechorcha the rabbis es haktan. So we have three changes of three insights in these words. Number one is the fact that it says zachor, zachorcha, which is from the word zachor, which implies only male, and it says zachorcha, it adds a chaf at the end, your males, and then it says kol zachorcha, All of your males have to come to the Beis Hamikdash. So what do we learn from these words? So the Gemara says that you learn from these words, Zachor is excluding women, which is obvious. Males excludes females. Zachor Cha, the fact that it says Zachor Cha doesn't just say all the males. It says your males. So it's implying something new, something additional would be excluded, that it has to be someone who's definitely a male. And that would exclude a tumtum and an androgynous. Who is a tumtum? A tumtum is someone whose private area is covered over. And an androgynous, in other words, there's a skin covering over the tumtum's private area, and therefore it's unclear if he's a male or a female. An androgynous is someone who has both organs. And we don't know what the halacha is. It's always a suffix, a question of is this person considered a male or a female? And we generally give him the stringencies on both sides. So in this case, we are exempting him completely from being a regel. You would think, no, he might be a male. You should, right? You should go. Tumtum also, you would think maybe he's a male. We should give him the stringency of a male and a female because we don't know if he's a male or a female. So maybe you should say, well, he should go to be a regel. The Gemara says that no, because we have a verse, that it excludes the tumtum and the androgynous. And kol zechorcha, all of your males have to come to the Beis Hamikdash. What does that teach us? That all means even children. Even children have to come, even minors. Amar Mar, Master said, in other words, we just said, Zachor lohitzias anoshim, that Zachor excludes women. Gemara asks a very strong question. How lamali kra? What do we need a pasuk for this? You need a verse to exclude women? Michdi, let's see. Mitzvah zaseh shazman gromahu. This is a positive commandment that is dependent on time. And any positive commandment that's dependent on time, women are nashim b'turais. Women are exempt, just like they're exempt from the mitzvah of they're exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah and shofar and all mitzvahs that are dependent on time, unless there's a special limud and unless they accept it on themselves. Of course, the women nowadays, of course, they all shake lulav and they blow the shofar, which became like an accepted thing. They have to now because it became like an accepted thing. But in essence, not everyone eats in the sukkah. A lot of women don't eat in the sukkah. That actually is one of the mitzvahs that they seem to have been stayed with leniency. A lot of them will, if there's not enough room in the sukkah, you don't find it here in Florida, but you find it in like New York. Women will eat inside, and the men eat in the sukkah. So it's a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. It's a positive commandment that it's dependent on time. And women are exempt from those positive commandments. Women don't have to say Shema before the third hour of the day either, right? It's a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. It's a mitzvah that's dependent on time. That's why men have to wake up by now it's somewhere around 9:30 is time Kriya Shema. At least the later time is an earlier time as well, around 9 o'clock. But somewhere around 9:30, 9:35 is time for Kriya Shema. Men have to wake up. Women, they could sleep in because it's a mitzvah saseh. It's a positive commandment that's dependent on time. So the Gemara says, how about the mitzvah of going to the Oila Regel, going to the Beis Hamikdash? It would seem that would be a mitzvah that's dependent on time. And they should be automatically exempt. What do we need a pasuk to tell you to exclude women? The Gemara answers, Itztrich, it is needed. You do need the pasuk to exclude women. Why? Salka daito chamina. I would have thought to say, Neilaf re'iyah me hakel, that we should learn from hakel. Hakel, it says men, women, and children, right? We're learning about it before, that what age children, is it talking about young children, babies, nursing babies? It's talking about children that are age of chinuch, right before the age of chinuch. So anyway, it says over there, it says men, women, and children. have to come to Hakel, have to come listen to the king, read the book of Deuteronomy. So if men, women, and children have to come to that, and we learned Re'iyah, we learned it says Re'iyah by Hakel, by the assembly, and it says Re'iyah by going to the Beis Hamikdash. So we learn that just like Hakel, women are obligated, I would think that women should be obligated in the law of going to the Beis Hamikdash. But you're going to ask, what do you mean? It's a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. It's a positive commandment. It's dependent on time. And if it's a positive commandment dependent on time, they should be exempt. And the answer is that, yes, if it just said a law about going to the Beis Hamikdash for all of the 3 holidays, I would say, yes, men are obligated, women are exempt. But we have a gzeira shava. We have a word here at Hakel, the same word it says by the laws of going to the Beis Hamikdash for the 3 holidays. And there's what's called a gzeira shava, a comparison of laws that we add the laws here to there, and those laws, the laws there to here. We connect all the laws, and that would mean that even though it's a mitzvah saseh, shazman grum, even though it's a positive commandment dependent on time, but because the Torah specifically says by Hakel, they have to go to Hakel, and here it says that you learn this law about going to the Beis Hamikdash for the holidays from Hakel, that was supposed to compare the laws and connect the laws. And so we would say that here there's a special limud, a special method of learning it out, that there's no exemption just because it's a mitzvah saseh shazman grum. And on this, we have the pasuk that says zechorcha. Here, the pasuk has to say, shalish pa'amim bashana, 3 times a year, yeira'eh kol zechorcha, all your males have to be seen in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Azara, courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. That means that even though you might think that women would be obligated because you learn from Hakel, that even though it's a mitzvah saseh shazman grama, but still you learn from Hakel that they're obligated, so you would think they're obligated. And the answer is that no, we have another source that it exempts us, and it says it clearly by these laws that women are exempt. It says zechorcha, you're males, so that would exclude women. So the Gemara says, Neilef re'iyah mehakel. We should learn from the word re'iyah that it says both places, Hakel and by the going to the Beis Hamikdash for the 3 holidays. So by Hakel, the 8th year law, and the three times a year law, we should compare all the laws and connect all the laws. Just like over there, women are obligated. Here also we should say that women are obligated. It comes and lets us hear that that is not so. And he would basically be that women are basically exempt. Amar Mar, master said, we just learned before, that it says Zechorcha, you're male, and because it says you're male, we exclude a tumtum and an androgynous, a person whose privates are covered over, or someone who has both organs and both sexes, and such a person is exempt from going to the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara says, Bishlema androgynous, it's good and understandable that someone who has both sexes of sexual organs, that I understand why we have to exempt him. It's needed to exempt him, because Salkadaita Chamina, I would have thought, he is definitely a male, because he has a male organ. L'chayav, he's obligated. So I would for sure think he's obligated. Komash Bulan, and it comes and lets us hear the Bria Bifnei Atzmehu, that he is a creature of his own, and he is a creation of his own, and therefore he is exempt. He's not really called a male, even though he does have a male sexual organ, but he is the pasuk here clearly states Zechorcha to exclude him. That I understand. Ela tumtum sveikahu, but a tumtum, someone who is his sexual organs are covered over by some type of skin that covers them both. You can't tell which sex he is. So do you really need a verse to exclude him? Sveika, he is a suffix. And since he is a suffix, he is unclear. And therefore, we should say that he is exempt automatically without needing a verse to exempt him. So we're going to stop there at that question. And we're going to continue tomorrow, Mr. Hashem. Sei gesund, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Rabbi, thank you.
Good day, everybody.